that can be done. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Nastapreshud Bhajesh. Make this louder. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us offer our respectful obeisances good unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, by regularly attending classes in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and by rendering of service unto the pure devotee. All that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed. True, nil, and loving service to the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2. The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations, Verse 47. Sasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudham Samam Sad Asata Paramatma Tattvam Sabdo Na Yatra Puru Karakavan Kriyarto Maya Fariti Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana Tad Vai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Brahmati Yad Vidur Ajasra Sukham Vishokam Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudham Samam Sad Asata Paramatma Tattvam Sabdo Nayatra Purakara Kavan Kriyarto Maya Pariti Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Brahmati Advidur Ajasa Sukham Vishokam Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudham Samam Sarasata Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayatra Purukarakavan Kriyarto Maya Pariti Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Brahmati Yad Vidur Ajasra Sukham Vishokam. So because this is 6 verses, I'm on the 5th verse doing the accentuated high part, so you all follow like that. I'll chant it one more time responsively. Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudam Samam Sad Asata Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayacha Purukaraka Vankriyarto. No, I did it wrong. Shabdo Nayacha Purukaraka Vankriyarto. Maya Pariti Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana. So here's the accentuated. Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso. Brahmati Advidur Ajashra Sukam Vishokam. You should let the Brahmin devotees, that's the etiquette, first. No. You see, you have to, like what I'm saying is you start from scratch, so to speak, with this shabdo. So you do the accented Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya. That's the way I'm. Yes. Oh, I thought you did both. No. You changed it. Shabdo Nayatra Purukaraka Vankriyarto. Vilajamana Bhai Padam Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Rameti Yad Vidur Ajasa Sukam Vishokam. Gopal. Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudam Samam Sarasata Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayacha Purukaraka Vankriyarto Maya Pariti Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Rameti Yad Vidur Ajasa Sukam Vishokam. Okay. Alex, you wanted to go? Go ahead, come on. This is the etiquette you're learning for the first time, so don't feel upset, you know. Go ahead. Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudam Samam Sarasata Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayacha Purukaraka Vankriyarto Mahi Pariti Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Brahmeti Yad Vidur Ajasa Sukam Vishokam Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shudam Samam Sarasata Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayacha Puruka Karakavan Kriyarto Mai Parati Abhimuke Cha Vilajamana Tadvaipadam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso Prameti Yad Vidur Ajasa Sukham Vishokam Shashvat, eternal, Prashantam, without disturbance, Abhayam, without fear, Pratibodha Matram, a consciousness opposed to the material counterpart. Shudham, uncontaminated. Samam, without distinction. Sat asata, of the cause and effect. Paramatma tattvam, the principle of primeval cause. Shabda, speculative sound. Na, not. Yatra, where there is. Purukarakavan, resulting in fruitive action. Kriya arta, for the matter of sacrifice. Maya, illusion. Pariti, flies away. Abhimuke, in front of. Cha, also. Vilajamana, being ashamed of. Tat, that. Vai is certainly. Padam, ultimate phase. Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead. Paramasya, of the Supreme. Pumsa, of the person. Brahma, the Absolute. Iti, thus. Yat, which. Vidu, known as. Ajashra, unlimited. Shukam, happiness. Vishokam, without grief. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter. Uncontaminated and without distinctions, he is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Please repeat. What is realized as the absolute truth?
What is realized as the absolute truth?
Absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief.
It's full of unlimited bliss without grief.
That is certainly the phase of the supreme enjoyer,
That is certainly the phase of
the personality of Godhead.
the personality of God.
He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless.
He is eternally void of all disturbances and fear.
He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter,
He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter.
uncontaminated and without distinctions.
Uncontaminated and without distinctions.
He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects,
He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects.
in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities,
In whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities.
and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya, Jagat Guru, Patita Pavana, Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Enjoyer, the Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman, or the Summum Bonum, because of His being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step, due to His distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the absolute distinct from the material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. And thus, the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Summum Bonum, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the Personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. The Personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization. As explained in the first canto, one must understand all three features of the Absolute, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Pratibodha matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there is the negation of such material inebrieties, and there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease, and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore is the Supreme Conception, and therefore in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. When the Personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities because he is the super soul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, thus there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the Personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things, but this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also the same is affirmed in the statements about the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification. And also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses, otherwise there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein. Sad asata param. The illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief, but here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction, whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they were originally meant, namely the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination, because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Sokyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. Om Jnana-Dhamandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuraminamnina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabinam Nyena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadamayam Dadati Svabanantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Paragamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sagana Vaganatan Vitam Sitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakavitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopishaka Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Madamatir Gati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Dibya Brindaranya Kalpajumada Śrīmad Ratnagara Sina Sanasto Śrīmad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Pistalabi Savyamano Smarami Śrīmad Rasa Rasarambi Mamsi Bhattitastita Karshan Venu Svanakopir Gopinatha Shriyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha Kripasnubhyeva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hari Ram, Hari Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari. Shasvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodhamatram Shudam Samam Sara Sata Paramatma Tadvam Sabdo Nayatra Purukarakavan Kriyarto Maya Parmiti Abhimuke Chavilajamana Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasi Pumso Brahmeti Yad Vidur Ajasa Sukam Vishokam. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinction. He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Make it louder so I have the facility to move it away if I want to. So Prabhupada begins this magnificent purport by describing Krishna interrelatedly, Supreme Enjoyer, Samam Bonum, like that. Okay, good. That's nice. I can adjust. The Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman, or the Samam Bonum. So this is very interesting. The Samam Bonum. What's the dictionary meaning of Samam Bonum? Everything, complete, the origin. Huh? What is it? So these two terms put together.
Greatest or supreme good, the chief or highest good.
Oh, interesting.
Referring to the object of human life.
Actually, I heard an interesting definition of just that definition, to define. It ultimately comes from defying God. You're trying to analyze in accord with your own limited sensual and intellectual abilities, and if such what you consider to be a satisfactory definition, like through empiric science, is not achieved, or you make such things in defiance to the unlimited achintya shakti, inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. Interesting. So Samam Bonum, the supreme good. So Prabhupada's not describing the Samam Bonum as the supreme good here, but the term or that meaning, definition, that meaning is good, because Krishna, many times Prabhupada said, Krishna, the all-good personality of Godhead. Whatever God does is good, even to his so-called enemies. By killing them, absorbing them into his Brahman effulgence, it's the ultimate good for them. It's all progressive ultimately for them, for everyone. The Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman, or the Samam Bonum, because he is being the cause of all causes. So this point that Krishna is the Supreme Enjoyer, or the only enjoyer, and everyone else is the enjoyed, and actually understanding what that inconceivable, unlimited enjoyment is, and agreeing to take the stita duli shardisham vichintaya, very humble position. Please place me again as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Being an atom at the lotus feet of the Lord leads one, as Prabhupada describes in the Bhagavad Gita, to become full in oneself. And as described more as this purport unfolds and reveals, such happiness or fullness is inexplicable by words. And there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities like becoming a billionaire or trillionaire, so much conniving and calculation, ways how to make money by hook or by crook or advance your name and fame. No need of any of those things. The conception of impersonal Brahman is the first step due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the Absolute, distinct from the material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. The Prabhupada, in one place in the Bhagavatam, gives the example of a traveler. He's going to a distant city, and when he finally reaches the precinct of the city, he can understand that the city is just ahead. He sees the distant skyline, buildings, and things like that. But it is a distant conception. He doesn't know what's going on in the city, seeing it from a distance. And as he advances further, he can actually see, still in the distance, there's a business district, there are parks, there's the entertainment district, the movie theaters, and the plays are over here, and if you see Manhattan from a distance, you're coming on the Long Island Expressway. You've had that experience of coming on Long Island, from Long Island. So you see the buildings, but then when you say, can understand there's the Midtown, there's the business district, there's the financial district, there's the entertainment district, Times Square, theater district, et cetera, et cetera. All right, and then from understanding those various places within the city, then you can actually understand the people that are in those places. And Prabhupada says in that purport, you can see dancing and jubilation, and then your complete travel to the city is complete. Therefore, thus, the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mundane example is you get to meet the mayor, and the mayor, who is the chief citizen of the city, will give you the key to the city. I don't know if they still do that. They give you like a big key certificate, you get a key to the city of Columbus. You've gotten that?
No.
Okay.
I've seen somebody got it.
Okay. Therefore, meeting the personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. This is why the topmost process is direct bhakti yoga, direct service to the personality of Godhead in association with his devotees. Not that we accept the spiritual master and then when we become adept, then we can worship Krishna directly, and then there's no need for the spiritual master anymore. Or we're very fallen in the age of Kali Yuga, and we worship Gaur Nitai, and then we become blessed and qualified by Gaur Nitai. We can put Gaur Nitai in the closet, and we can simply worship Radha and Krishna because we're so advanced. Actually, worship of the Lord in his various features, it is all interrelated, and all those, especially Lord Chaitanya and the worship of Radha and Krishna, they mutually enhance each other's worship, that you become more and more advanced reciprocally. So by the mercy of Gaur Nitai, you can approach the precincts of worship Radha and Krishna, and when you can worship Radha and Krishna properly, then you can actually really worship Gaur Nitai on the platform of very advanced understanding. And when you can do that, then you can worship Radha and Krishna on an even more advanced and deeper confidential level of understanding. And when you can do that, then you can ever increasing. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pradipanam Purnat Mittis Vardhanam. So, therefore, meeting the personality of God includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. Hansaduta at the Kumbh Mela in 1971, they have every 11 years in Vrindavan, so they're having one now, which is certainly not as big as Prayag Kumbh Mela, but anyway, so the big one, 1971. Prabhupada, is it true that by bathing at the certain times you get liberation? Yes. But we've not come here for liberation. We've come here we're already liberated. We've come here to preach pure devotional service. And Prabhupada again and again says that if you act to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, you're automatically on the platform of liberation. Pratibodha matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus in the first realization of Brahman, there is negation of such inebrieties. There is a feeling of eternal existence, distinct from the pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. Can someone open up for me? Adi Leela, chapter 4, verse 35. It's not in the book, so I need it on a machine. There's no book here. Adi 4, verse 35. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. So this is very interesting. When you actually realize the summum bonum, the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul of everything, you come to the Supreme Conception. Affection is realized. Thank you very much. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. So this is the ultimate meaning of the absolute truth. Reciprocations of love and affection with countless expansions in the various tattvas. There's the Ladini Shakti tattva, there's Vishnu tattva, and there are Jiva tattva. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. When the personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because the reality of the affectionate relationship. Bhavet kriya vidinyansi ihakaya kartavya avasya anyata pratayavas pratyavaya. Here the use of the word bhavet, which is in the imperative mood, tells us that this certainly must be done. Non-compliance would be abandonment of duty. So what is the ultimate duty? This imperative, or duty, is applicable to pure devotees. Neophytes will be able to understand these affairs. So this chapter describes the confidential reason for the descent of Lord Krishna as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which in a nutshell is to understand the love of his topmost devotees of Brajadam, headed by Srimati Radharani and her associates, the Gopigan, the devotees in the conjugal love of Godhead in the multi-variegated categories. Only after they will be able to understand, elevated by regulated devotional service under the expert of the guidance of the spiritual master, then they too will be competent to hear of the love affairs of Radha and Krishna. one cannot hear or understand the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna as long as one is under the material conception of life. One will, as Prabhupada said, they are sure to stumble, just like the Sahajiyas in Vrindavan or the Mayavadis, to think that these affairs are akin or to be compared with their experience of the perverted, abominable reflection in this material world. As long as one is in material conditioned life, strict discipline is required in the matter of moral and immoral activities. The absolute world is transcendental and free from such distinctions because their inebriety is not possible. The transactions between lover and beloved in the spiritual world are pure transcendental love and unadulterated bliss. And now Prabhupada goes on in this purport to describe the result of loving Krishna in the primary rasas. What is the sublime result? And Prabhupada begins by those who do not do that, are not attracted by the beauty of these rasas. What is their terrible fate and fall down? One who has not been attracted by the transcendental beauty of rasa will certainly be dragged down into material affection, thus to act in material contamination and progress to the darkest region of hellish life. Bhutva dina ganeshako karunaya, kopina kanstashrito. The six Goswamis of Vrindavan are glorified because they completely gave up the material conception of life, not for any selfish reason, but bhutva, dina, to deliver all the poor, fallen souls in this universe. Thus, they are engaged in missionary activities meant to deliver all the living entities in this universe. They are worthy of taking shelter of, glorious, and they are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. One who actually can understand the symptom of one who is actually on the platform, purified Shuddha Sattvam platform of worshiping Radha and Krishna. Their outwardly perceivable activities, which anyone can see, no matter what condition of life that they're in, even the non-devotees, that they're constantly engaged in distributing Krishna consciousness. That is the symptom. Not just symptom, that is the requirement. Prabhupada says in the 7th canto, for one who is not interested in preaching, constantly talking, and he's saying in that place, but we could also mean working to expand the Krishna consciousness movement, to withstand the onslaught of the modes of material nature is practically impossible. Or to get out of Maya is practically impossible. But, even the person's very rich by external calculation, money, they have good bodily looks, they have education, or they live in an aristocratic situation. Because they're lacking Krishna consciousness, they're very, very poor. Piteous creatures. But by understanding the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, one is freed from the grip of attraction to material so-called love between man and woman. We can test our Krishna consciousness when we see the perverted reflection of the affairs of Radha and Krishna and the activities of envious, fallen, conditioned souls in the temporary designative dress of man and woman in this world and going about their activities based on envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the divine couple, do we actually see it that way? Or do we think, oh, I would like to have such a situation too? Freed from the grip of attraction to material so-called love between man and woman. And we can understand, Prabhupada directs us at the end of this purport to the 5th canto, the teachings of Lord Rishabhdev. We're distributing that. It's kind of a little bit of a transcendental trick or misleading title, spiritual yoga. Yeah, man, spiritual yoga. Yoga and spiritual, put those two terms together and put it as the title of a book. And then when they read it, like, oh my God. There was that one video from a year or two ago, some young woman, I read this book and went like dogs and hogs and, and I don't want to be like that. And the potency of hearing of the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna, hearing of the Rasa Leela particularly, is so powerful that even those who are completely under the grip of attraction between so-called man and woman in this material world, the potency of this, it can destroy such false conception. But it has to be done under the expert guidance of the doctor. It's like medicine, but medicine means proper dosage and proper frequency. Or we could say recovering healthy appetite. If you're sick with typhoid, to eat a full meal is more or less to walk yourself to the death chamber. You can't eat solid food when you have such a disease. But by and by, being cured of the disease, then your appetite will come back. And at a certain point in your convalescence, then you should eat very, very good to recover your bodily weight and strength and health. Similarly, one who understands the pure parental love of Nanda and Yashoda for Krishna will be saved from being dragged into material parental affection. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I am your servant, O dear Krishna, and I maintain my family members as I would maintain your servants. I don't see them as simply just family members. Or if we have been abused by our parents, then when we can understand if we had some bad experience in our non-devotional childhood, and we understand the pure parental love that Nanda and Yashoda have for Krishna, if one accepts Krishna as the supreme friend, the attraction to material friendship will be finished for him, and he will not be dismayed by so-called friendship with mundane wranglers. I'm your friend today, but then when the sense gratification stops, I'm not only no longer your friend, but I also become your enemy, because when we were previously friends, I learned all your secrets, and now I can use all that against you. So if you become friendship with Krishna, and as Prabhupada is saying that, no fear of its being broken. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, and there is no grief and no fear. I hit the wrong button here, and now it's put me on today's purport and taken me away from... Very nice. If one accepts Krishna as the supreme friend, he will not be dismayed by so-called friendship with mundane wranglers. What is a wrangler in the dictionary? No, use somebody else.
I just touched a button.
Okay. Think of, is it a pair of jeans?
It's a jean company.
Or is it a cowboy that...
A person in charge of horses or other livestock on a ranch.
No. Good. Is there another definition?
A person engaged in lengthy and complicated dispute.
Okay.
Is a bickering disputing.
Huh?
A bickering.
A bickering.
Mundane wranglers.
Mundane wranglers. If he is attracted by servitorship to Krishna, he will no longer have to serve the material body in the degraded status of material existence. So dasya prema frees one from service to this material body. All right, you don't want to be a servant? Then you're going to have to serve your material body all the time. What does Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati say? The more one is absorbed in serving one's body, the more one's service to the Lord and the spiritual master and the devotees diminishes or wanes. Similarly, one who sees the greatness of Krishna in neutrality will certainly never again seek the so-called relief of impersonalist or voidist philosophy. What is that? Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, Bhagavad Gita 4:10. Persons frustrated by being taken advantage of in the material world, they find it very, very hard to understand the personal conception of the absolute truth, what to speak of a personal relationship in service to that absolute person. And Krishna says, such persons becoming purified by knowledge of me ultimately achieve transcendental love for me. That's why Krishna consciousness is very difficult for people to understand immediately, because they're so much conditioned by their previous conditioning of bad experience in this material world. And what is it? The conception of personality after liberation frightens them. Therefore, they prefer a certain type of merging. This is a diseased conception of life in that purport. Very valuable purport, Bhagavad Gita 4:10. Only in Krishna consciousness can one achieve the highest perfection of life. So, when the personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he's the full naked. And that's word naked, we could mean, he's the full pure and then uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the super soul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. So, the process, most amazingly, Krishna, he likes to display in his pastimes and his intention various ununderstandable or inexplicable contradictions. So the greatest thing Rupa Goswami understood, Namo Mahavananaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, that you are Krishna himself in this age of Kali, distributing the topmost Braja Prema in this most fallen of all ages. Therefore, in the final instructions to Maharaj Parikshit in the 12th canto, after describing the second chapter, describing the horrible nature of Kali Yuga, the Bhumi Gita, why was he saying, and then the 4 categories of universal devastation? Prabhupada writes in one place, we forget all these devastations. All right, well, we make it through Kali Yuga and it's Sat Yuga again, but you know what? Round and round the Yuga cycles, there's a partial and ultimate destruction of the universe. Everything finished. And then you're held, for millions and millions of years in the body of Mahavishnu, and then to come out again with the same, karmic material desires that's in your bank account from last time, and you're born in the exact same position to start again, round and round. So this is to increase one's Detachment from all that is material. It's one of the teachings to Uddhava in the 11th canto, the name of one of the chapters. So within the midst of all of that, very, very heavy, there's no happiness in this material world. Get out. Kaler dosana de rajan, hastiyeka mahadgunan, kirtanad eva krishnasya, mukta sangha parambrajet. Therefore the sages sometimes wish all good luck to this age of Kali, because simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can rectify everything and go back home, back to Godhead in this very lifetime, achieving Braja Prema Bhakti. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken. Thus, there is no grief and no fear. So the symptom of one fixed in such affectionate relationship with Krishna, serving Krishna in this life, that they always are the same. You can meet them 5, 10, 20, 30, even some devotees I've seen again for the first time in, maybe 30, 40 years. Wow, you're still the same. Of course, the aging process is there, but it's the same devotee that you have a relationship with. In fact, they're even more beautiful and attractive because of having performed devotional service and remained steady and fixed through all these changes and things that have happened. So we should aspire to be like that too, a steady, unbroken devotee. What is it? Only uninterrupted devotional service, not falling down in any circumstance. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifice. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. So always nirvishesha sunyavadi, defying the Mayavad, atheistic and voidist conception of the absolute truth, always standing as champion on the process of pure, unalloyed, loving, transcendental service to the Lord. The Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of life. So unless one is firmly established or elevated by the grace of the Lord and his pure devotees and the spiritual master to the actual platform of Yukta Vairagya, which was Rupa Goswami receiving the full benediction of Lord Chaitanya, and Srila Prabhupada staying just within a few meters of Srila Rupa Goswami's Samadhi and Bhajan Kutir, was blessed by him to come to the West, to America, to New York. What does it say in one of the biographies? The capital of do your own thing. Yeah. Talking about contradictions. So Krishna arranged the hippie movement that Prabhupada come, but what were the hippies all about, they were into like so-called what is transcendence and spiritual, but don't trust anyone over 30. What to speak of over 30, Prabhupada was over 70. Question authority. Prabhupada's disciples completely accept him as the supreme authority, and no other authority would be compared. And there'd be no question of questioning Prabhupada's authority. And 4 regular principles: free love, no illicit sex. Amazing. So you can actually think that, to establish Krishna consciousness so strictly and so on such a high platform in that time was just amazing. Srila Rupa Goswami, to give you a very sublime and ultimate view, in the beginning of his one act in his book Dana Kali Kamudi, which is a one-act drama play describing the wonderful pastime that you see when you climb on the roof of Govardhan, the Dan Nivartan Kund, the place where Krishna erected a toll booth and was engaging in loving, joking exchanges with the gopis that they had to pay a tax for their milk products in exchange for Krishna allowing them to go past the toll. So at the very beginning, Rupa Goswami says, all glories to Radha's love for Krishna, the enemy of the Mora demon. Although it is all pervasive, that love, it still increases at every moment. Although it is the most important, it is completely devoid of pride. And although it is the most pure, that love, it is beset with duplicity and contradiction. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things, but this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also the same is affirmed in the statements about the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination and material identification. And also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses, otherwise there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein, sad asata param. So to get free from material attraction, sexual attraction, based on material identification is absolutely necessary and so much desirable so that we can be in our original primeval state of innocence, so that this spontaneous affection and unbounded joy can arise. And we can actually relate and love other living beings, what to speak of the devotees, without any attachment and aversion interrupting. This is the ultimate meaning of Lord Chaitanya's statement, which describes the completely transcendental, even to the Varnashram system of pure devotional service in service to the Lord's eternal beloved devotees. I am not a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, a Sudra. I am not a sannyasi, a brahmachari, a vanaprastha, or a grihastha. I am simply the servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Krishna, who maintains the gopi damsels of Brajadam. And Prabhupada in one place in describing that says, that is the way of self-realization. Now here, the illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. So if there's, say, like a cabinet meeting of like all the departments and like the mayor or the governor's office, there could be a head of the correction department, but when he is there, with all of these big, leading administrative personalities, he's not, everything that he does in the prison, keeping the prisoners in order, and various levels of, severity that are inflicted upon them in accord with their either their disobedience or their sincere desire to become corrected, that's at rest when he comes to the meeting or he's in the free society. And if he was to do that, it would make him look, it would be embarrassing, it would be like shameful. So the illusory energy, she does not stand. Her activities are not applicable or even needed in the pure spiritual world, where the pure devotees and the Lord are engaged in their loving reciprocations. The illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief, but here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. Can I see Bhagavad Gita 4:10? I might pick out a few things from that. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. Very difficult for a person too materially affected to understand the personal nature of Krishna. Generally, people who are too attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it's almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Like this knucklehead, who was trying to bring us to, what he considered his platform of reality at the end of the Harinam. Complete nonsense rascal, but... So much absorbed in materialism. Such materialists cannot even imagine there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. In the materialistic concept, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. There's birth, and before meeting death, there's old age and disease. So like when you're young, here I am, I'm like 20 years old, 25, 30, yeah, rock and roll, yahoo! Everything's beautiful, I got dexterous senses, my intelligence is sharp, I'm handsome, I'm beautiful, I'm the king or the queen of the world, And then, but you forget that it's going to dwindle and it's all going to be taken away. Who knows what's going to happen in your old age? If even you make it to old age, you might become crippled. You're going to have so many aches and pains, and know for certain that you're going to be ugly. Because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of remaining the personality after liberation frightens them. When they're informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, actually, spiritual life is by far more individual and personal than the so-called individuality and personality on the material conception of life. And we see that, and it has to be based on complete purification, truthfulness. Prabhupada describes that the disciple should be very frank and open-minded, should be no duplicity, shouldn't be hiding anything. So material life, we're always calculating, I'm hiding this and that. Memories of Prabhupada's disciples had that Prabhupada was the same as his within and without. Not like, Mukundamar says, I always like to meet big people and, the kind of, what they try to put forward. They even hire a publicity department to make them, what this person is like. But their private life behind closed doors and their is a quite different thing. They become afraid of becoming persons again, and so they naturally prefer kind of merging into the impersonal void.
To get free from all of these material conceptions of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by a bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines of regulative principles of devotional life, and ultimately achieving the platform of bhava, love of Godhead. And Prabhupada concludes the purport here by giving the important verses from Nectar of Devotion, describing the stages of devotional service: ado shraddha tata sadhu, sadhu sangha tabhajana kriya, tato natar nivritti syat, tato nishtas ruchis tata, ata shaktis tato bhaves, tata premadi anchati, sadakam ayam premna, padur bhave bhavet kama. Real love of God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the trance of the loving service of the Lord. So, by the slow, Prabhupada writes here, we could also say gradual process of devotional service, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. So it could be as slow or as gradual or as fast and as accelerated as we want it to be. So association with devotees is to help us to overcome this inertia and mediocrity, and always stand on the platform of intense dynamism on a moment-to-moment daily basis. Such activities are unlimited and constantly increasing. Anandam buddhi vardhanam, pratipanam purnatmitas vardhanam. There is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Sokyam.